by popular demand. This is the Turnbucklepad podcast on YouTube.com. Respect wrestling or get out. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Turnbucklepad podcast. And the gentleman that I have on the phone today, I've heard his name a lot. I never got the honor and the privilege of seeing his work, but I never heard a bad story either. I never heard any stories, but the fact that I didn't hear any bad ones was even better. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome my guest today, Mr. Tristin Hayze.
Hey, how you guys doing? It's an absolute honor to be here. Nice privilege. Another place for me to run my mouth and flap my gums, so let's get out with it. I look forward to it, man.
Well, it's going to be fun. You can say anything you want, talk about anything you want. The first thing I want to talk to you about with the state of wrestling is, and this is pretty much a common conversation that goes amongst most wrestling fans and wrestlers alike, is that what do you really think is damaging the business? Do you think it's the state of the business that's bringing in people who aren't cut out for it? Or do you think it's the people who aren't cut out for it that's damaging the business?
I think it's kind of, a combination of things, to be honest. One thing I think is that there's a lack of regulation in the business, be it with companies and performers. I personally, and I've thought this for several years, and I know I'm not alone, I think you should need to be licensed. That's the same way MMA fighters and many boxers have to be licensed to fight. I think you should have to be licensed to be a wrestler. You should have to be licensed to be a promoter or to own a company and run it. A lot of people are under the misconception that in Illinois there is no state athletic commission anymore.
Which
That's
is true.
absolutely wrong. There still is. Boxing is still regulated, and there's many other sports that are as well. They just don't recognize professional wrestling, and if they did, a lot of these so-called wrestlers and so-called indie feds would be out of business. They'd be gone, and the market would be flooded. People wouldn't see some of the horrible crap that they see and misinterpret it as, oh, well, that's what's around.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is part of what's killing kayfabe and killing the business, it's social media.
Amen.
I use Twitter, I use Facebook, and I use it to promote, and I've had my moments of weakness where I went off on things, but personally I think it gives too many people who shouldn't have that big of a voice, a big voice, and it gives too many opportunities and temptation to go off on rants and things, and give stuff away. And it gives the fans too much access to us.
Amen. Yes, it does.
If you look back to when you were a kid, when you really loved wrestling, even as far back, or as early as the Attitude Era, the internet was just starting out. There was no Facebook, there was no MySpace, there was no Twitter. There was dirt sheets, but you couldn't go and message your favorite wrestlers and send them a tweet or send them an email and get a hold of them so easily.
Yeah.
There was still that mystique and that wonder about these people, and the lack of communication between them. It actually made them kind of special.
Yeah, it kept what you were doing special. It kept the mystique, like you said, and it just stinks now when you got fans walking up to you saying, "Oh yeah, kayfabe," and it's like, what do you know about it?
Yeah, and you know what? I don't mind if people say to me something like, "Oh, it's predetermined, right?" Or, "You know what the outcome's going to be, right?" I'm all right with that. I've come to terms with that. I live with that. I'm okay. It's what it is. What bugs me is when somebody comes up and goes, "Oh, you do that fake wrestling. Get in the ring with me. I'm not going to be mean to you. I'm not going to be a jerk. I'm going to treat you like I treat everybody else." But you're going to see, it might be predetermined. We might know who's going to win ahead of time. That doesn't make it fake. Not one bit.
You still have to be physically fit and in shape. You got to understand how to tell a story. You got to understand what moves you're using and why you're using those moves. And a lot of these guys who come to the business today, they don't take in all that. It's one giant class. There's a lot of different courses, and a lot of these guys think they're going to get to the top by what they think is right.
Yeah, and there's very few places where I would even recommend somebody to go train. When Prince Ali was running his school, I would always turn people to them. If somebody in Indiana had asked me for a suggestion, there's an awesome gentleman by the name of Billy Rock out there who does smaller classes that go for several months at a time. He teaches you everything you need to know, from psychology to promo work to just how to handle yourself backstage and with promoters and everything. And he's a guy that I actually respect and trust.
Right. Well, that's how it should be too. I mean, because as much as you got to pay attention to the business and why you're doing it, you also have to learn from the correct teachers. And there's a lot of guys out there who, how do I say this nicely? They didn't want to play ball with the company they were in, so they went and started their own. And they think their way is the right way. And do you think, to some extent, it influences bad leadership or bad training, you could say?
Oh, no, I absolutely think that it does. And I mean, there's a lot of guys that can't cut it as wrestlers that actually end up making very good trainers, which is kind of the old adage, those who can't teach, I came up with some people who, for lack of a better term, they just couldn't cut it in the ring. And it wasn't that they didn't know how to, it was just they couldn't physically do it. Those guys ended up being great trainers. They put out a lot of workers nowadays that work everywhere. Some of them are on TV. But there are a lot of guys that just think that you can buy a pair of boots and you can buy a pair of tights. And if you find somebody with a ring, or if you go out and buy one yourself, hey, you're set. You're a professional wrestler. Which
Yeah.
is not the case. And I find that quite insulting at times.
I agree with you. I really do agree with you.
Quite a bit to get to where I'm at. And, I'm not a guy you're ever going to see in WWE. I'm not a TNA guy. But I've had 16 years out there. People know who I am. I've got a sometimes good, sometimes negative reputation. Everybody learns the hard way.
Yeah.
But, I'm proud of what I do. I enjoy it. I love it. And I kind of want to protect it at times.
And I think that's the way it should be with a lot of the guys. I mean, there's some guys get into it because they just love what they do. It's not always about making it to the E or TNA or Japan or anything like that. It's just being able to do what you love. It's not so much your destination, it's the journey, you could say. With that being said, what are some guys that you looked up to in the beginning of your career, like a locker room leader of sort that helped mold you and help you harness your craft?
Believe it or not, when I first started, I'd never even heard of independent wrestling before. I was watching Monday Night Raw, and I saw a commercial for the old LWF Bump Factory out in Mokina. And I was like, wow, the whole new world opened up to me. So I went out there, did about a 3-week tryout, and at the end of the tryout, Acid, a.k.a. Mike Nolan, CM Punk, and John McInerney, all sat me down and told me I was too small to be a wrestler. Because I was about 120 pounds soaking wet. And, I was kind of bitter about that for a while, but I got it. But I paid my dues, did my time, put on my weight, waited, did some boxing and MMA and stuff. Finally, I got in there. And the guys that I thought I was going to look up to, the guys that were, were the big name guys of the indie companies around, I don't have any bad experiences with them, but they weren't the guys that taught me stuff.
Right.
The guys that taught me stuff were the lower level guys in the smaller companies. Whether it be guys like Aspen, who, like I said, looked out for me at the beginning, told me, you're too small, I don't want to see you get hurt. And I held some resentment for that for a while until I understood what he was trying to do. But then there were guys like Mimic from the LWF. There were guys like Machine, who just last night became the Pro Wrestling Blitz heavyweight champion.
So I've heard.
There were guys like Bad Boy Rob and DC Lightning, who not too many people know about, but they were actually willing to take me in and teach me stuff and train me when no one else would. And then there were guys like Willie the Bomb Richardson, who has been around literally forever and a day, and would watch out for him. Guys that would kind of, and like I said, there's stories out there. And there's been times when people have had to pull me aside, smack me upside the head, and be like, shut up, do it this way, trust me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But guys like that, guys like the late Steve Zelk, a.k.a. Botch, who was a Christian minister, believe it or not, and used to run professional wrestling shows out of a Christian church, the same way people used to run boxing matches out of the old Catholic churches and stuff like that. But it was none of the big name guys. It was all the guys that were there, the journeymen, you know, the guys who actually loved the business and cared about it. Didn't want to bury people. They wanted to see people learn how to do it right, whether it be the hard way or the easy way.
Well, the hard way was always the best way because you really learned how it was, say, back in like the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, way before the business got exposed. You were put through tedious, brutal, extensive training, and if you kept coming back, it proved that you wanted it, and I don't think a lot of these guys nowadays go through that.
Well, back then, they were so protective of the business in a way that I actually wish existed now, even if it meant that I would never have gotten in. But I wish it existed now, because I mean, back then you had guys like Hiro Matsuda who would break your leg, if you know, just to see if you would come back for more. I mean, that's a pretty extreme thing to do, just to kind of test the measure of a man and see how bad he wants it. But there were people that came back. There were people that left. He sorted them out his own way.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever read Chris Jericho's A Lion's Tale, but he described something very similar in that when he started out, when he was training, and one of his first times when he was training at the Hart Dungeon, Keith Hart came in and literally they flexed him and he did some sort of move to where his jaw was being pushed together and he could feel his teeth breaking at the point, and the whole point was to see if he was going to come back and keep at it, and he did. So I think that's what stands out right there, is that people want it too easy. You know, sometimes you got to go through a little bit of hell to get to heaven.
Unfortunately, I see that quite a bit nowadays, and there's a lot of guys talking about what they deserve more than what they've earned. And that's the sad part, none of them even gripe and bitch about, oh, I deserve this, or oh, I've earned this. They all think that they just deserve something.
Yeah, and that's not the case at all.
No, I know people who have talked with promoters, and the promoter have told them, I'm not going to name names, but they've recently told them, okay, well, in 6 months, I'll put you on a show. 6 months later, this person has shown no progression. They've actually backslid. They've trash-talked the company. They stopped coming to practice. And then when that 6 months comes up, they're like, well, why am I not getting a spot on the show?
Yeah.
I deserve a spot on the show. No, you didn't earn your spot on the show. You don't deserve anything. You earn it.
Do you think the wrestling's in jeopardy when you got promoters somewhat catering to people like this? I mean, even if they're not trained, they feel that even if they're doing some kind of service to the company, that they're entitled to it no matter what. Do you think when promoters start looking at that aspect and not the traditional buildings of the business, when that view starts changing, do you think that's another reason why we're having problems?
I think it's absolutely a reason why people have problems. Not just from the aspect of it's hurting the business, but you put people in there just to shut them up, or just to give them what they want before they're ready, or whether they're safe or not. You're risking your product, you're making the business look bad, you're risking the safety of everyone in the ring, and you're just overall, for lack of a better term, you're shitting up something you claim to love. And
yeah.
That's not something that I take lightly.
I agree with you. I was just a fan who got lucky and got behind the curtain, but I listened to enough vets and watched my whole life. I knew what was respectful and what was right out of respect to the business, as opposed to a lot of these fans. They just act like super fans and come up with the dumbest shit sometimes too. But you know, you got to have those special cases to where if this business is going to continue to grow and continue to move on, you got to have those in there who still believe in it.
I think, unfortunately, a lot of people, they see a shitty product and they settle on it, and they're like, oh, well, yes, this is awesome, this is great, because they don't know that there's better stuff out there. The fans don't always look at it and go, oh, well, that's awful, because despite the fact that there are a lot of marks nowadays, there are a lot of people out there that know the ins and outs of the business, they don't get what's good and bad sometimes, and that I think that also hurts pro wrestling.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that need to be addressed. Now, like you said, with the social media, that don't help any. And then when you got like really tragic events of some sort, or if a wrestler's doing something really bad and it makes the news or TMZ, that puts another negative angle on it as well. So I think people really got to learn to be a lot smarter when they're going to be pursuing this, because the wrestling business won't give you a personal, up close feeling. You would get that kind of feeling from the independents, but you wouldn't get that from the WWE or TNA because they're so huge and they really can't do that. But an independent show, it's a lot more of a personal, what's the word I'm looking for? Not an influence, but just a personal experience. You get to understand it better.
No, it absolutely is. And like I said, that can be both a positive and a negative, because it gives you the opportunity to be more social with fans and to let them know who you are more. But then at the same time, you're risking that aura of specialness, that privacy that you deserve. Because there's times when fans can get too comfortable with you, and whether they realize it or not, they start crossing lines.
Yeah.
And if they're talking to you on a daily or weekly basis, or if there's so much easy access to you, why are you special anymore? Why are they compelled to come out and see you on a monthly or weekly basis, or wherever you're at?
Yeah.
Which is why I also kind of think that, some guys make poor choices working 3 or 4 feds in the same area.
And not even changing the gimmick either.
Nope.
That's another thing, fans.
Changing the gimmick, and all wondering why they're not drawing big. Well, why would you draw big? Anybody can come at any time to see you at any show. Like, oh, he's at for just lack of a better term, oh, he's at Crash Test Wrestling tonight. Well, he's going to be at Fire Pro next week, so I can see him then. Oh, if I miss next week, you know what? He's going to be at Blitz. I can just go see him there. Why? Why would anybody come see you? You're flooding yourself. You're taking away any reason that you were special or important. And it doesn't matter how good or how shitty you are in the ring. If you give yourself just completely up to the public,
yeah,
they're going to stop caring.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And sometimes it gets a little, even for some fans who are too smart and they know too much about the business, along with the boys in the back in the locker room. Sometimes you see these guys and they're working at really good, high-established companies, but then you see them working these little crap feds or yarders, if you want to call them. And to me, the only thing I could think of is that even though if you need the money, I get that, but that's almost like a high-class escort selling their ass for $20 on the corner. It's like, why would you accomplish yourself so high just to drop yourself so low?
Somebody claiming they're in independent wrestling at our level for the money is just delusional.
There ain't no money in the independent scene.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're, a guy like Cole Cabana, who is my favorite example of something like that. He's an independent wrestler. If you ask him what he is, he'll tell you he's an independent wrestler. And he makes a living doing that. And he makes a better living now than he did during the time when he was with WWE. Because he's a very intelligent individual. But guess what? Not everybody has that access to own a company, to be able to travel around the world. Not everybody is as talented or as unique of a person as he is. 95% of us, myself included, for lack of a better term, were weekend warriors. Yes, I've been around for 16 years. Yes, I've been all over the Midwest, and I've gone to places like Alabama, Georgia, Texas, and there are many more on my plate. And myself and my tag partner are going to be getting up most of the country over the next year and a half. But we're not making big money. We're doing this because we love it. We're doing it because we enjoy it. And we're doing it because there are a group of people that want to see us in different places. And you know what? We're not leaving our families all the time. And we get to have fun and enjoy ourselves and make a little bit of extra cash to support ourselves on the side. It's a beautiful thing. But there's no real money in it.
Not unless you're one hell of a salesman and you're marketing yourself like Hulk Hogan on that kind of level, and I don't see anybody in the independent scene on that kind of level.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't even like using the N-word, so me and Hulk Hogan, there's big differences there.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there is. Well, we have a question that we ask all our guests when they're on the show. And it's going to be interesting to see what your reply is going to be, being a veteran yourself. What advice would you give to somebody that's new to the business or someone that's trying to get into the business?
I think the advice that I would give is probably the advice I wish somebody had given me sooner. And I did get it. I just didn't get it as soon as I wish I had. Sit back, shut up, watch every single match. Set up the ring, tear down the ring. Go flyer. Go to practice. Go to the gym as much as you possibly can. When somebody gives you advice, whether you like them or not, listen to their advice, process it, do with it what you want. But the biggest thing that I'd say, just shut up. learn when to speak and when not to speak. Because you know what? More often than not, it's people's mouths that end up holding them back.
And it also screws them over in the long run, too. I've heard some stories about guys being around big names and they screw themselves over out of an opportunity because they opened their mouth when they shouldn't have.
I've never personally screwed myself with a big name, but I have been there and I have learned the hard way when I've opened my mouth when I shouldn't have in my younger days. And it can really hurt you. I'm not saying I would be some big star right now if I didn't have a big mouth when I was younger, but I think I'd be a little bit better off than I was.
Very, very. That's really good advice too, because that doesn't even just apply just to the wrestling business. I think that applies to anything you're passionate about. Is shut up and do your homework and listen.
Yep.
Well,
Watch
Tristin,
every match, pay attention, and like I said, whoever wants to give you advice, take it. Doesn't mean you got to use it all. Just take it, listen to it, process it, see what you can do with it.
very good words. And they won't only those words won't only help you as trying to become a professional wrestler, but they'll also help you as a person as well. You know, it's very good. You know, mental motivation, you could say. So
Yeah, and I can honestly thank guys like Machine and Steve Zell for stuff like that. Because there were times they both had to just kind of put me down, put their hand on my shoulder and go, listen, it's time for you to shut up.
yeah, well that's good because at least there's still some people out there who believe in being leaders in the locker room. Because I don't see many of them anymore. Not unless they're being paid to be.
No, and there's a lot of guys that just, they won't exactly get the back of the promoter. And every promoter, I think, needs that. Not somebody to bully people for them, but just somebody to, to have their back, to show them, all right, you got their support. And it's not to kiss their butt to get anywhere up in the company that you're in. It's just everybody needs that. Nobody can do it on their own.
Yeah, it's a team effort. You know, when it comes to the show, it's a team effort.
That's exactly what it is. And a lot of people don't look at it that way.
No, no, they don't. It's really sad. It's really sad. Well, Tristin, if the fans wanted to find you, how can they find you?
Very easily nowadays. As I said, social media gives you that opportunity. You can find me on Facebook at Tristin Hayze, which is Tristin. A lot of people misspell Tristan. And then Hayze is Hayze. I'm at Bad Street PSH on Twitter. You can also find my amazing tag team partner at Bad Street Buddy on Twitter and Buddy Roberts on Facebook. We have several different companies all over the country that we're talking with right now. We'll hopefully be heading back to Texas very soon with NWA Texoma. We just had an amazing time there with them.
Awesome.
Fire Pro Wrestling, we are currently, at the time of recording this, the tag team champions over there. So if you want to come on out and see us, it's Maryville, Indiana. Look us up. It's once a month. It's in a Christian church. It is a family-friendly show. There's no excessive violence, no vulgarity, no sexuality. And kids in the 12 and under are free with any paying adult. So come on out. You're going to have a good time at all ages. And it's not going to rob your wallet.
Well, this is good, which is really good, because like I've told fans before, you want to see a good wrestling show, go to an indie show.
Yes.
You'll
and
get
if you're in Indiana, you want to go to Fire Pro. If you're in Illinois, you want to go to Pro Wrestling Blitz. Those are my favorite places. And I don't even work for Pro Wrestling Blitz. I'm a fan of the guys that are there. I got a lot of friends there, and I genuinely enjoy the product.
That's all that matters, man. That's all that matters. Well, Tristin, we really thank you for taking this time out to come on the show and speak with us a little bit. It's been a real honor having you. Fans, you already heard where to find him. He's not a hard man to find. This concludes our time today with Mr. Hayze. In the meantime, Tristin, we want to thank you for stepping on the show.
Absolutely. It was an honor and a pleasure to be here, man. Thank you very much.
Well, we thank you very much. Until then, fans, this is your host, Mike Stover, and we're out.